buon pomeriggio, and buonasera to all of our Laziali, perhaps some Interisti joining us, and calcio fans all over the world tuning in. An episode of Behind Enemy Touchlines, a Lazio World segment here where we preview the upcoming match here, joined by two guests. I'm thrilled to call friends to chat and bring the Inter perspective for our opponent this weekend. Gianmarco, thank you for joining us. And Nima, I always am going to mispronounce your last name, so I'm going to let you give the proper pronunciation.
No, it's Tavale Ruzzari. Yeah.
So, fellas, thank you for joining. I'm excited to chat with the both of you. Gianmarco, you and I will actually be together watching the Inter match, so that would be a fun one. I know the last time you and I watched a match together, it did not both times. I think will be interesting because both times we watched a match together, we had the same rooting interest, and it went quite poorly in absolute tragic fashion for both of those matches, both Italy versus Northern Macedonia and then Lazio versus Milan, where our dear friend Achadbi had a mishap. We'll talk about Achadbi here in a few, but I'm going to be interested to see who really is the unlucky one when we come together to watch this one on Friday. So lot to get into, big match early in the season, early in this campaign. But, first thing I want to dive into is to give folks a little bit of a state of the union of Inter. Catch us up on, where you guys are as a club, brief overview of your mercato, some of the highlights and biggest acquisition and what you guys look like going into the season this year. Nima, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, the biggest signing is obviously Lukaku. He came on a loan less than 12 months after they sold him for 120, 150 million euros. So obviously that's the biggest marquee signing. He was the first signing. Then the other players they brought in were, Onana on a free transfer, Mkhitaryan on a free transfer from Roma, Aslani, Bellanova. These guys were, more like, kind of backup role players. And Gosens was obviously bought in January, and Perisic left. So, I mean, that's the business they did. I mean, the reason why this, the Dybala thing, he was a free transfer, but Inzaghi preferred Lukaku. Then they had to get rid of lots of players because who they had as who they because they needed to reduce the wage bill, and they had lots of players who like Vidal, Sanchez, Vecino, Ranocchia, Kolarov, etc. Who are on big wages, and they needed to offload them, and they did. It took a while, and Dybala would only have been possible if he would have accepted certain terms, and if he would have if also Inter would have been able to offload one of Dzeko and Correa. That obviously never happened, so that's why they didn't get the Dybala. But the main thing was, all summer was talk of Inter, or still is, Inter have to make 60 million euros net profit from the transfer market by the end of June 30th, 2023, by the end of the fiscal year. And obviously Marotta and was trying to not sell a big name player like they did last year with Lukaku and Hakimi. So they were trying to find a way, and obviously when teams know that one team is in a little bit of a financial pickle, they try to haggle, and so Pinamonti took some time, Casadei, nobody expected it. They still managed to get that over the line. Di Gregorio was already an option, which became an obligation. And then you have, what's his name, Gravilon as well. And so they've kind of hit about 2/3 of that. But they also sent some other players on loan with options that become obligations or options, etc., which allows them to hit the 60 million euro target by the end of June 2023. Inter fans are obviously pissed off because there was this rumor that, not a rumor, we know that Inter were considering selling Milan Skriniar to PSG, but they wanted 80 million euros, and they wanted to use about 30-40 million of that to sign Bremer. The problem with and because they had an agreement with Bremer since January with him, So that was pretty much it. And that didn't happen in spectacular fashion within 48 hours, where Roma managed to get Dybala on a free transfer on 4 million euros, 4.5 plus 2 million in add-ons, which is incredibly cheap. Which says more about, maybe Paulo Dybala should sack his agent, who went from 9 to 4 in less than 6 months. And then you also have the situation, with Bremer, where I mean, Juventus sold De Ligt, and so they had cash. Inter never had, Inter didn't have that kind of cash. And of course, we're talking about Urbano Cairo, who's one of, if we're talking ball busting presidents in Italian football, he's bronze medalist, followed by, in second place, your Claudio Lotito, and then the last level boss, Aurelio De Laurentiis himself, who nobody wants to deal with because he's a pain in the ass. But in a good way, because the reason that nobody wants to deal with him is he always gets paid. I mean, just look at this summer, 40 million euros for Kalidou Koulibaly with 12 months left. 25, 30 million for Fabian Ruiz, player with only 12 months left, who's made it clear he doesn't want to extend. So people know this guy he doesn't mess about. And that's what people are upset about. And so where we're in now is you've got the core of the squad together, you've improved with a striker, and we're actually debating the backup central defender, who that is. And to me, I mean, Acerbi, yeah, he's not exactly a world beater, but he had his best period under Simone Inzaghi. He became a national team player. He was actually part of the European, Italy Euro team that won the Euros. He even played a game or two. He's fallen out with Lotito. He's fallen out with Sarri. He's fallen out with the fans. And you can get him on a loan with an option, not an obligation, but an option. And Inter aren't going to pay more than 500,000 euros. So they hold all the trump cards. And for me, it's also interpreting what is a backup role. Is it a backup role? That means the player has to be ready when he's called upon. Is it an improvement on Stefan de Vrij? Well, you don't have any money. Neither Chalobah or Akanji or Acerbi are today, or anyone else being mentioned, are better than Stefan de Vrij today. As much as Stefan de Vrij had a bad season last season, we know how good he is when he's at his best, and I think the jury's still out on that, where he is. But so for me, it's like I don't see the drama here. You know what I mean? I just think that Acerbi is like, he's like a pair. He's a pair of comfortable shoes. He's not the flashiest new pair. He's just a pair of comfortable shoes that you're gonna wear not when you go out to dance or go out to dinner with your friends, but you're wearing them when you're going down to the supermarket to buy some milk. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he's gonna play 5 to 10 games a season in the Coppa Italia against Cremonese and Lecce at home. And who do you want there? Do you want that guy who for just a year? Or do you take, which is the safe bet, or and that's all he is. I mean, Inter fans are pissed off because of the smile against the Milan game, because it pissed off a lot of people. And that's why he's pretty much has had a war with Lazio fans as well, who were disappointed with him and his behavior then, and obviously his background at Milan and all that. So, I just think this whole thing is a little bit emotive, and I prefer not to be emotive about it.
Yeah, I want to get real quick, because I want to give Gianmarco a chance to touch on Acerbi, and I want to have my say in that too. But real quick, Gianmarco, what is your rating for the overall business Inter did? And then when you're looking at your lineup, the players you have now, assuming nothing drastic comes in or comes out between now and the close of the market, how do you feel about this squad?
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess there was a brief time for like that 48 hours where we missed on Bremer, we missed on Dybala, where I would have said it was a complete catastrophe. I was very upset with those things, but now having really let the dust settle and recognize that we strengthened, positions of weakness, which were really backup players. We didn't have that midfield depth, and being able to bring in Mkhitaryan and Aslani to replace, guys like Vecino and Vidal, those are big upgrades in my opinion. And obviously being able to bring in Lukaku and now replace Radu with Onana, who I'm hoping at some point will be able to take the reins and be the starting keeper. I would give it like a 7.5 out of 10. I think if we would have got the other two players that we were rumored to be linked with, it would have been a 9 out of 10 in my opinion. But you know what? I'm pretty happy overall with the way the Mercato is ending for us, and hopefully that's. I mean, obviously we have a few more days left, and there's rumors of whether it's Halaba or a Cherby or whoever it is. I mean, although Nima and you kind of know where my opinion is and who I would want. At the end of the day, it really is. If that's what Inzaghi wants, I'm okay making him happy.
So why aren't you? Let's touch on this because I think everything's always about a matter of perspective. I want to hear yours. For me, one of the things I always like to give Juventini a little shit for is I see a lot of like woe is me, right? Like the suffering of a Juventino, and for me, look, I've been a Laziale my whole life, and to complain about winning 9 Scudetti in a row and to act as if, oh my God, what suffering, right? It's all about perspective. To me, a little bit of, and I don't want to oversell it, but I don't want to. The phrase that comes to mind is a little bit of an embarrassment of riches, and I know that's not fair for you guys, but again, perspective for me. As a Laziale that's had to endure some pretty grim center back and defensive situations. I would be very fortunate and pleased if only to have an Acerbi coming in to play a backup role. And so for me, when I've looked at a center back that has been our best center back over a course of 4 or 5 years now, who played his first 2 seasons, particularly that first season and a half, remarkably. You could argue, and I don't think it's even much of an argument, but he was a top 3 center back in the league his first year and a half, 2 seasons. Especially in again where he's likely to go, Inter under Inzaghi, who got the best out of him. For me, knowing a little bit of the background as to perhaps why he struggled. Now, age could very much play a part. We won't know that.
Sure.
But, knowing that the fans have kind of turned on him made it really difficult to play in an environment where, every time you touch the ball, the fans are coming down on you. It's really difficult for him. Knowing that there was a switch in system, too, that takes a little bit of adjustment. So those 2 things to me make it understandable as to why he's had a dip in play. His head not always being in it and having some of those changes. So I see a change of scenery for him, knowing that he's largely been an absolute consummate professional his entire career, has been really smart in the way that he plays. And going and reuniting with Inzaghi, to me, seems like a pretty ideal scenario for both Inter and for the player. Why are you so down on him?
I think it's a combination of a few things. I think one is I'm definitely just tired of us signing mid-30 players, who are kind of on the back 9 of their career. And I'm not saying he can't do a job, although that is something I am worried about because I feel like pace may be a concern, especially in that middle central defender role that he would be more than likely filling. I don't think that Inzaghi would put him to the right or the left of that 3-man defense. So we already have an issue in pace with Skriniar. Now, if you bring in another guy who is also not the quickest, I think when you play against the teams like a Milan who can have, there were a few times even last season where I saw Leao coming up, and once he beat him, I'm like, oh gosh, like who else is going to be able to come in there? So I get that he'll only be a 4th choice center back, but I think I worry that it may take a little bit for him to build that confidence back up and be able to get into the lineup. And God forbid, with the way some Inter fans are feeling, if he does have a slip up, if he does make a mistake, and then the fans pile on that, and then they throw in the fact that, they're going to start saying, he's Milanista or this and that. And is that going to play into it where it just continues to be like a snowball effect where it keeps getting worse? And I liked him. I mean, honestly, I remember when he was at Sassuolo, and there was rumors of him going to Inter when Spalletti was the manager, I was all for it. I did want to bring him in. And yeah, like you said, like his first couple of years at Lazio, he was a good defender. I think that we're slowly seeing that decline, and I just don't. I would rather go with youth if possible. I mean, I don't know if you've heard the spaces, but I've been a big proponent that I think we need to start. We're not going to ever be able to spend like the Man Cities and the PSGs and just buy whatever player we want and bring them in. And then even a player who is considered a world-class player would be willing to accept a bench role. But I would like to buy young, develop them. You know, I think we're going to see De Vrij be moved out, you know, maybe not this year, or another, maybe extended, maybe not, whatever. But you want to have that guy who could learn from those guys and then be able to step in and fill that starting role. This is really like a stopgap for, you know, potentially. And
this is what I don't understand. Young players need playing time. Sitting on the bench does not develop anybody. And that's why I'm saying this is a backup role. If this was a starting role, believe me, I would be way more pissed off than you are.
No, and I get that, but I think it's both ways, Nima. I think a young guy, if he's around those professionals, if he's around those guys who are starters and can learn from them, that could also be instrumental in development.
Absolutely,
you know,
I'm not denying that.
If you loan a guy out to another team, I get that. That's not lost on me, but I do think it could be beneficial to have a young. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Obviously, it looks like that the three names that we've mentioned are the ones that are probably one of them is going to come in. But I just think
let me put it to you this way: Akanji to me is like that. What that makes, in my opinion, Akanji is okay. If you get Akanji, then you're putting someone who's competing for a starting lineup place with De Vrij. That improves. That improves the team. 100% behind that. If you can get him on a loan or
he's my top choice, but I don't think the money's going to be there.
You know, that's 100%. You know, I'm with you on that. But someone like Tanganga or Khaloba, these are guys who are early in their careers. They need time to play, and they need playing that time. They need minutes. They don't have experience. They struggle to get into their own teams, and you're bringing them in to do what? To sit on the bench. And when somebody is injured, then you throw someone who has no experience of the league, because Italy is different than the Premier League. They have no experience of being, of being in that position, and then you throw them in there at the San Siro, which we know is a very special place, and they fuck up. Sorry, and then you have that. Like, it's like you saw what it did to Radu. I mean, I don't think that the mistakes that he's done are mental. I think we can all agree on that. It's not. The mistakes that he did at Bologna, the ones he did now for against Fiorentina, that's a mental glitch. That's what happens when you can't handle the mental side of it. You panic and you do crazy stuff like that. I don't think. I mean, I've never rated Radu, but he's not that bad. He's not insane. Like, he's not trying to hurt his own team. And those kinds of mistakes are like that. This is what I mean. In that situation, you want experience, because all he needs to do is to play 5 games. That's it.
It's about what's the role that you guys are looking to fill. Yeah. I think the contract terms, look, from the Lazio side of things, certainly one of our challenges is actually selling players. We've got a laundry list of folks that are still on our wage lists that we haven't been able to move. Affects our ability to sign any incoming transfers, and for us, it would be great to sell Acerbi. I think that's what we would like to have happen. From the Inter perspective, it being a loan with an option to buy, I think it's a perfect stopgap. I know it may not be perfect for you, but I think it gives you what you need in this season. Particularly, I know, Gianmarco, you're very high on Inter and have them as your favorites to win the Scudetto. If that's the goal, I think you're looking at a player that can come in and do the job of fulfilling some depth, being able to, if needed, in an emergency situation, come in and start. And we know he can start in this league and play well. Or come off the bench and get a job done. Kind of thinking and moving a little bit towards, this upcoming match. I want to talk about the state of the two clubs in terms of the form that they're in. Early in the season, we've got 2 matches under our belt. From the Lazio side of things, really hard to know what this team is going to look like in terms of style. I think immediately in Lazio's first match against Bologna, we have a goalkeeper error, an immediate red card to your guy, Gianmarco. And we see him get sent off, leaving Lazio with 10 players, an immediate change in their strategy for that game. Throw it out the window. They're buckling down. They're trying to survive. We saw Bologna kind of, throwing caution to the wind, just playing a little bit reckless. We knew ultimately they were going to see themselves in a level playing field, which Lazio was able to take advantage of. But, when I look at that match, no indication of who Lazio is going to be. It's, hey, we survived. Fantastic. In match day 2, Lazio at Torino, very much a match that I hope is not an indication of who Lazio will be, because there was no fluidity in the game. There was none of that sarismo that can get us excited. It was a very neutered match. I think both teams played uninspired, and there was not a ton of creativity, whether it was the lineup choices or being early into the season and not necessarily figuring things out, which is, for me, a little disappointed going into year 2 of Sarri, which he's had a full off season, a full ability to train with the majority of the players. So for me, going into this match, it's pretty pivotal. Most importantly, to learn a little bit of our identity as a team this season. How are we going to play? How will we match up against one of the Scudetto favorites? I want to learn a little bit more about who we will be.
I think it's a really interesting question. I mean, the 2 games I've seen from Lazio this year, I think it's, obviously you can't draw any conclusions after 2 games, but it is a Sarri team that is more defensively balanced than I've ever seen them. I think I always, me, Sean, I've always believed, and we've spoken, I think Romagnoli was a deal that you guys should have done years ago.
Yeah.
I think he's, not just because of him being a Laziale and being the future captain. I think he's at Lazio is I'm not mean this in a disrespectful way, but I think that I think that's the level he should be at. He's not a player who can captain a team that wins the Serie A week in, week out, wins year in, year out, competes for that, plays in the Champions League, has an ambition to win. Like, that's not who he is. But at Lazio, I think he is at the exact right place. I think Patrick, I've not been his big fan, as anyone, but I think he's been really, really good this season. I think next to Romagnoli, you have defensive stability, which is something you've not had ever, as long as I can remember, pretty much. Even under Simone Inzaghi, it was a little bit flaky and shaky. I mean, Acerbi was good, but you still, you didn't exactly have defensive stability week in, week out. So I think this is an interesting Lazio. I think Lazzari is looking better than I expected him to. I think the midfield trio is always good. You have the best midfielder in the Serie A instead of getting.
Well, you mentioned the midfield. Midfield's interesting because for 3, 4, 5 seasons, there has been this stability where you knew exactly who was playing. It's Luis Alberto, it's Lucas Leiva, and it's Milinkovic-Savic. Done. No questions asked.
Yeah.
Not a difficult decision for Simone. Not a difficult decision for Sarri. That's our midfield 3.
Yeah.
This season, it's really interesting because, you see the exit of Leiva. You've got Cataldi. I love Cataldi because of the connection. He's from our Primavera, but not necessarily a player if your ambitions are Champions League football that should be owning that position. And you see a player like Marcos Antonio coming in, highly rated. Everybody that I've spoken to, and even my scouts on my own team, highly rate him as a very, very intriguing player.
And he's such a Sarri player as well, isn't he? I mean, he's such a Sarri
absolutely.
midfielder. I wonder if Luis Alberto stays in the end as well, because we know
that's another question, right? He hasn't started, so there's some options and some question marks as to what that midfield will look like. That honestly, again, I go in saying more questions than answers about this Lazio team, especially
Well, we
going.
know that Sergej Milinkovic-Savic is going to start, and we know that he's the
Yes.
best midfielder in the Serie A. I mean, that we do know, because he has played in every single position in a midfield. He's played a number 10, he's played a number 6, he's played a number 8. He's played everything centrally, and he handles everything. There's not a role he can't do. He's strong in the air. He's never injured. He's got a good shot on him. He can assist. He can read. He's a complete midfielder. We all know that. His passing is great. So we know what we're getting from Milinkovic-Savic. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think Sarri is going. I don't think it's going to be like last year. This fixture last year. I think it's going to be much tighter than that. I think Sarri will want to. He'll want to win, but I think he wants to build some solidity and stability as well. I think he's happy with that, building a little bit more from the back than you're used to. Obviously, it's still possession football, it's still the triangles, all of that. But I think he doesn't want to be as exposed as he's been before. And I think he will try to do that to Inter. And we know that when you put Inter under pressure, Allegri showed that last year. The only 2 times that I saw Inter get outplayed, not against Real Madrid, not against Liverpool, but against Juventus, against Allegri in those 2 games after the Super Cup. I'm talking about the Serie A game and both Inter won, by the way. But when you pressure Inter high up the way that Allegri did in those games, you put Inter in difficulty. When you put Brozovic and Çalhanoğlu in a situation where they don't have time on the ball, Inter struggle. It's as simple as that. We all know it. I mean, the most fundamental player at Inter is Brozovic. If you take him out of the game, you're going to have problems. Now, Inter obviously have Asllani this year. They didn't have that last year, and he's a different kind of player. But my point is simply that there are ways to disturb and stop Inter from clicking. And I think Sarri knows that, and he's done it before. And I think, depending on who's going to play, I think this is going to be tight. I see this being a really tight game. I don't think it's going to be an open-ended, free-flowing, attacking game at all. I think it's going to be much more cagey and tactical than that.
Gianmarco, going into this match, what Lazio player are you most concerned with?
I mean, it's clear. It's Milinkovic-Savic. That guy could score from anywhere. He could take over a game. He can negate. Probably our strongest midfielders. So he's a guy that I think will be crucial to whether you guys can win or if you do lose. I mean, it really depends to me how he's able to show up. And I guess I would also throw out too. If my boy Maximiano is the starting goalie. Like I've hyped him up. I was super excited hearing him coming to the Serie A, and he was a guy, like I said before, that I wanted Inter to get before we got Onana. I put him as my signing of the summer. So I really hope that maybe not against Inter, but I hope that he will be able to show his just how good he is.
Johnny, you're so unlucky with goalkeepers. Like honestly,
I might be the worst. Yeah, with that, it's true.
No, not worse. You're just unlucky because I don't think that guy is a bad goalkeeper. But when you hyped him, within 2 minutes, 6 minutes,
I'm gonna need you to stay away from my keeper.
He's terrible. He might be the worst goalie ever.
I don't believe in jinxes, but Johnny, I swear to God, what is it with you and goalkeepers?
Yeah, anytime I hype someone up.
Look on him. I think it's really great that you brought him up, and it's interesting because we know how quick fans, pundits, you name it, like to overreact. Lots of people, pretty immediate, makes that unfortunate mistake. Absolutely should have done better. And Provedel played pretty well in that match.
Yeah, he was good.
And immediate conversation is, I don't know that Maximiano is going to get that spot back. And I'm thinking to myself, we're one game into this thing.
But that's because Lazio finally have put themselves in a position where they have options.
Yes.
This is the best window that Lazio have had ever under Lotito in the era of Lotito.
Without a doubt.
I don't think you've ever had a window this good. And I think it took a ball buster like Maurizio Sarri to come in there and say, either you do what I want or I'm out of here, for Lotito to kind of understand this guy means business,
Yeah, but when you have that race and you've got that competition between two players, because there is some depth there, that is never going to be won or lost on match day one. And particularly when you look at Maximiano, who was our biggest signing in terms of transfer that we spent on. there's no way Lazio just throws in the towel on a player like that, where he's not going to have opportunities. And then Provedel did not play well
but it
against
would be
Torino.
stupid if they threw him away over that. I mean, for goodness sakes, okay,
Right.
it was a bad mistake after 6 minutes, but if you don't have longer patience than that, then well, then
correct.
you shouldn't be a sporting director. Well, no,
yeah.
but
So no,
seriously, I mean,
he very much. I think he's a player, especially again, given Provedel came out strong, played a little shaky against Torino, did not have a strong match, did not make any major errors in a game that was goalless, but certainly opened the door to go, yeah, maybe it was kind of silly for us to crown him as the number one so quickly. So I think he's a player.
But I think that's good. I mean, after Strakosha and Peperena and whatever God else you've had, I mean, it's the same thing with Johnny and I mean, it's like you don't have that anymore. You finally have some options and you finally have some depth, and that's something that has been hurting Lazio for quite some time. And I think you've got something going on there. I mean, the way I see it, I think generally speaking, the 7 big clubs, I think it's going to be a very fractured Serie A. You have a top 7 with Inter, Milan, Napoli, Juve, Roma, Lazio, Fiorentina. I think these guys are going to have their own Serie A. And then you have Atalanta a little bit, maybe kind of close to them. And then I think you have a middle layer. And then you have the bottom layer, the 5-6 teams that are going to fight to try to stay up, and avoid 3 places. But the top 7, I think Lazio finally have something exciting to a serious viable project. And I think now this is for me year 1 with Lazio, with Sarri. Last year was year 0. It was basically, again, post COVID, just try to get the ship into harbor. Don't, can't spend too much. You can only spend what you sell. Blah blah blah. But this year they've actually, they've invested.
Yeah, and it was Inzaghi's squad.
Yeah, exactly.
It was still Inzaghi's squad.
Yeah.
They had to cut the age of the overall squad. So now I think it's definitely that year 1. There's a baseline for them. Nima, who do you see as being the biggest threat on Inter in this match? If you're looking at it, who should I be worried about? Because I know who I'm kind of scared of.
You need to be worried about Brozovic. If you take Brozovic out of the game, you have nothing to worry about. Or not nothing to worry about, that's hyperbolic, but you have far less to worry about. Brozovic is the most important, most fundamental player at Inter. If you can neutralize him, if you can get him to be frustrated and his body language is negative and his passing doesn't work, and when he gets like that, he misses simple passes and then he sulks and he gets into like this vicious circle, then you've won quite a bit. And I think Sarri's gonna put. I don't think he's gonna man mark him like Allegri does, because I think Sarri's much more of a modern coach. But I think he's gonna put Milinkovic-Savic to annoy him a lot. Because physically, Brozovic doesn't stand. I mean, barely anyone. Milinkovic-Savic is huge physically, but Brozovic is quicker and much more dynamic. And I think it's gonna be about trying to neutralize Brozovic. Because everything, he's so important. Everything goes through him. He is the pivotal player. He is the player that other players look at Inter to see where they need to be in terms of position and balance. He is the focal point and has been, and especially under Inzaghi. He was obviously important under Conte as well, but not as much, because Conte used his midfield. He liked to play Barella there sometimes. He played Eriksen there sometimes. He liked his midfield trio to change positions a lot. With Simone Inzaghi, we're back to Spalletti's Inter in the sense that Brozovic is the focal point. He's the most important player. When he clicks, Inter click. And also you need to watch out, because I think Di Marco's going to start, and I think that's the wise decision, because his crosses, when you have the aerial threat and speed of Romelu Lukaku, I think those are, you need to stop Di Marco being able to play those crosses in early, because that gives, when those crosses are played in early, that means there's space behind the back line and Lukaku can attack it, and he'll just, that's going to cause you problems. And also Brozovic, like those two things are where I would worry.
GM, who do you have?
Yeah, no, I would have said Brozovic as well. I think he is our most. He's not our best player, but he's our most important player. And like Nima said, if you're able to neutralize him, that kind of takes us out of our rhythm. It kind of changes really everything for us. I mean, we're not able to link up play from the midfield to the forwards, and then it just turns into everybody, even fans, really sitting at home throwing their arms up in the air, like, what are we doing? Go bring somebody on. Like, everybody's panicking, trying to fix the ship. So I'd say him, and then of course Lukaku. I mean, I feel like he's already started this season with, like, he has a chip on his shoulder that he needs to get off, and he wants to just reaffirm his place in football and show that, hey, yeah, you know what, I may have had a bad year last year, and then of course people will say, oh well, it's easy for him in the Serie A, but I think he's like a man on a mission, and I would be a little worried about him, because I think he's going to be scoring a goal almost every other game at the with the way he's been playing. So
Yeah, he's who I'm most worried about, and perhaps I'm still a little shell shocked for how he's murdered our defense in the past. Vivid memories of him essentially burying Marco Parolo and putting him on a gravestone. And we know the successes he's had against Romagnoli, and so for me, I come in a little bit worried about what he's able to do. And while our defensive situation has looked a lot better, it's also against Torino and Bologna. So first real test to see what we look like against a player like Lukaku, which is a perfect segue into some predictions a little bit longer term when we think about, again, the two players in the attack that'll be going up against each other, likely in a capocannoniere race between Ciro Immobile and Lukaku. What are your predictions? We'll start with you, GM, on who finishes this season in either, whether it's for the capocannoniere or between the two. What are your goal predictions for each one?
Yeah, I mean, in my preseason predictions, I did have Lukaku winning the Capocannoniere. I had him scoring 30 goals. I feel like that he's just, I mean, I don't know. He looks like in better shape than when he first came to us, in my opinion. And I think he's only going to get better. It's definitely going to be, I really think it's going to be between him, Cheeto, and Vlahovic. I think those are the three guys that are really going to be battling it out. I think it's really going to come down to which team gets the more penalties, because Lukaku's going to be taking, and we know he's never missed for Inter, although I probably just jinxed him and he'll probably miss his first one. But in Cheeto too, they, I think that helps them, kind of pad their stats both. So I had, in my predictions, I had Lukaku at 30 and Cheeto at 28. So I mean, but he could go obviously either way.
Nima, what do you got?
I'm not gonna, Ciro Immobile is probably the most underrated striker in his generation based on what he's actually achieved and where he's done it. Now, having said that, it's quite obvious that he also, and I've said this countless times, I think it was on this podcast a few years ago, I said that I think he's a little bit unlucky because he was born in the wrong era. And what I mean by that is that he was born in the era of the number 9 having to have the traits where football, you had to be a Benzema, an Ibrahimovic, a Haaland, Harry Kane, Lukaku. Like, that's the kind of number 9 you needed to be in order to succeed as a number 9. Whilst he is a player who, like Dybala, needs to play in a 2-man attack. Dybala can't play as a number 10 or as a left winger or a right winger, or a number 9 as a false 9. He needs to play in a 2-man attack. And similarly, Ciro Immobile needs to play in a 2-man attack. He needs to have someone to play off of. And I think if he was born 10 years earlier, I think we would be talking about about him with much more respect, and I think he would have played for quote unquote bigger clubs and won bigger things. But having said that, at the end of the day, you're born in the era you're born at, and he's not the elite striker. But what he has done is truly unbelievable. You don't win 4 Capocannoniere that he's done in his career if you're not a good striker. It's as simple as that. Yes, I think the Sarri system doesn't suit him as good as the Inzaghi system did, but I think it's also Sarri's smart, because he's the way that he uses Zaccagni and Felipe Anderson, they're much closer to him. And also with Milinkovic-Savic, he makes these runs so that he's not completely isolated the same way that he is for the national team, for example, I think. So that's why I think, and also, he takes penalties. So I think he will score his 20 plus goals. I don't think he'll win the 5th Capocannoniere, but I do have no doubt that he'll score his 20, 25 goals. I'm just not sure that's enough to. I think this year with Lukaku, Osimhen, Lautaro, above all, I think you need to push 30. And I don't.
Yeah,
think
I'd agree. Yeah, I think I have Cheeto somewhere between 20 and 25 goals. And I do think
That's
he'll
where I have him.
probably got to be closer to 30 this year. I think, and I'm probably leaving some goals on the table depending on what happens with the Luis Alberto. He's really been such a key figure, having that creative player that is just on the absolute same wavelength as a Cheetah. When those two are near each other, they know how to play off of each other so well. There's always a boost in goals when Luis Alberto is on the pitch for Cheetah.
Yeah.
If we lose him, I get a little bit worried with what that production looks like. Now, Cheeto's going to find his goals. It's certainly a matter of whether or not we're talking 30 goals or closer to 22, which if he can break that 20 goal mark, it puts he's already an elite company, but he's now entered a territory that only one other player's been in. So I do.
It's crazy. I mean, we're talking, can he reach Francesco Totti? For me,
Right.
can he reach Silvio Piola, which is insane. I mean, that I thought that record was unbreakable. And I mean, if he does, it's crazy what he's done there. If he manages to do it, it's absolutely insane. And he is so underrated. And I think he gets a lot of stick, unfair stick. I think a lot of it is, there's no doubt in my mind that, okay, at the end of the day, the coach has a system and Mancini has a system, and the players have to adapt to that system. Of course. And I don't think that system was brought out to be to get the best out of Ciro Immobile. It was to get the best out of the team. And when you win the European Championships, you can't really argue with someone with his choices. But I do think that with Zaccagni, above all, I really think he's an intelligent player. I think that was a really shrewd signing by Lazio. He's a hardworking player as well. And I think he will help Ciro score his 20-25 goals. And also, Ciro takes all the penalties, doesn't he? So I think that just there gives him that extra little boost. But I don't think Capocannoniere for me this season is more Osimhen, Lukaku, Lautaro, Dusan Vlahovic. Like, those are the guys I have.
Yeah, I'm less convinced with Vlahovic right now, and everything going on with Juve, their midfield still being such a question, Allegri, but seeing Osimhen and kind of that offense right now, it's hard not to think he'll be up there as one of the top two players. Truly, look, and we've talked about the European hate that Cheeto gets on the national team, and you think about Euros, but to your point, you've got 11 players that are playing in a specific role to ultimately accomplish the best thing for the team, and when the team meets their objective and probably overachieves, and wins the Euros, it's quite frankly astonishing how negative people are about a Cheeto. When I
think the thing with him is also, you have to remember, this is Italy. If there's one thing Italy's always had, it's world-class goalkeepers, defenders, and strikers. The midfielders have always kind of historically been a little bit, in the background. Now it's upside down world. It's a absolute plethora and explosion of world-class, fantastic central midfielders, good wingers, but not really any world-class strikers, and not that much, world-class goalkeepers, sure, but not that many central defenders that are, if we compare, you have Zoff, Zenga, Buffon, you have Maldini, Baresi, all these, Cannavaro, Nesta.
Yep.
You don't really have that, or even up front, Vieri, Luca Toni, Filippo Inzaghi.
Yeah, I would throw it back and argue with you, Nima, that while you look at those strikers and club career and this aura behind them is wow. You remember the Vieris, the Pippo Inzaghi's, but when they played for their national teams, they weren't putting in production that merited this iconic status. You think about Luca Toni, who
Well, he won the
obviously
World Cup. Look, he won the World Cup.
right, but with the way the
scored
players
one goal.
perceived, he
No,
scored two goals in that World Cup.
But he was outstanding in that World Cup and how he played. I mean, if you look at look at the game
you
against
talk about
Ghana,
production and what the team accomplished.
Yeah, but he was fundamental in how they played, and he was constantly this giant. The first long ball up to him holding up and creating. I mean, this is what I mean. I think what people why they criticize Chiro is because if you compare him to those, he's not as good as them, of course. And also, they are also defined by the time they played in, and in the time they played in, they were world class, every single one of them. And I think people look at that and say, well, we used to have this and now we have this. And I think that's a little bit unfair on Chiro. I think that's a little bit unfair to make that comparison, because at the end of the day, what is he going to do? Is he going to, I understand why Maurizio Sarri says he should turn down the national team, but of course he's not going to do that. Why would he do that? I mean, I get why Sarri says that, because I mean, given the amount of criticism he gets, Sarri sees, look, they're not. It seems like they're not gonna play in a way that suits you, and you're never gonna get the recognition you need. So why bother? You've already won something. You've already written history. Let that be the. So I get Sarri's point, but at the same time, I also understand Chiro is like, well, no, I mean, I want to represent my country. So I get both sides, but I think the best thing for everyone involved, I think, would be for Ciro Immobile to retire internationally and just focus on Lazio, and to just kill that debate that way, because he's already won a trophy with Italy, the Euros. They finally won the Euros, and Ciro's part of that. He scored a couple of goals. Maybe he wasn't the most important player there, but he certainly, definitely was involved and helped Italy win that. And you can't really beat that. The only way they beat that is if they win the World Cup. And I don't think Italy's going to win the World Cup, at least not with Chiro as a starter, because that's in 4 years' time. And by then he's 36, 37. And I don't think he's going to be. So, I mean, it's just, for me, it's just, just count your losses. You have had a good career. You have won something with Italy. Not, as you said, many of them did not do that. I mean, Filippo Inzaghi was at the twilight of his career when he won the World Cup. Cristian Vieri was out of the national team when Italy won the World. He didn't win anything with Italy.
Right.
So, so I think maybe that's that's the best for everyone involved. But I understand why, after this debacle, and also that he feels this feeling of revenge. I get that. It's human to feel that. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's a little bit of upside down world. Italy have always, and Italy now have missed 2 World Cups, which is insane. It's never happened. I never thought I'd live to see that. 1, let alone 2. So it is what it is. But no, I think he will go down when he retires as one of the greatest finishers in Italian football of all time, because you can't take that away from him. The goals, the numbers speak for themselves. Yeah, it's as simple as that. I mean, it's just, it is what it is.
Gianmarco, we're gonna wrap this up here in a bit, and I want to focus as we head to our predictions. But before we get into each of your predictions, how does Inter win and lose this match, and how do you see Lazio affecting that? What is Lazio, if anything, differently? What do they have to do to either win or lose this match?
I mean, I think for Lazio, I think it's really going to be winning the midfield battle. Although I think Inter has the better midfield overall, I think Lazio has the best midfielder, not just in the game, but in Italy. And for me, I would say even Europe. I mean, I can't say enough good things about SMS. So I think that'll be pivotal, is how they're able to control that game, or if they're able to control that and kind of negate Brozovic and really just, control the pace. For Inter to win, I really think it's going to be pushing the tempo. I think if they're able to get up the field quickly, move the ball quickly upfield, make sure that they're able to get it to their forwards, whether, Lautaro and Lukaku. I mean, they almost have like telekinesis and kind of know what the other one wants to do and where the other one wants to be. And if they're able to get up and running and get going quick, like usually you can kind of tell in the first 15 minutes if they're clicking and kind of on the same page. So if that is happening, it might be a long game. And I'm not saying goals wise, but because Inter seem to have a problem scoring and finishing at times. But if they're able to get that going, and like Nima said earlier, if DiMarco can get crosses into them, Lukaku is a beast in the air. I think that's how they'll be able to win the game.
What about you, Nima? How does Inter and Lazio win
How
or lose?
Lazio wins this game, I think, is by playing a little bit deeper and hurting Inter on the counter attack, because I think that's where we've seen that Inter are a little bit vulnerable. Simone hasn't really got the balance right, the defensive line and where he wants the midfield, which is expected this early in the season. It's been a 3-month break, or 2.5 months, or however long it's been. But so I think for Sarri, it's about that. It's about exposing and hurting Inter on the counter attack, and Lazio are good at that. Felipe Anderson, Zaccagni, Ciro Immobile is probably, like, if you're counter-attacking, you want him on your side. He is good at that, because then he has space and time, and he doesn't miss. So
and he seems to always hurt us. So
yeah, exactly. and he's got, actually, you're right, he's got a good record against Inter. So I think it's that's what it is. It's about, for Lazio, it's about hurting Inter on the counter and maybe defending a little bit deeper, which I think suits Alessio Romagnoli to the T. I think he's that. I mean, I was surprised that Juve didn't snap him up, given that Allegri likes to play with a low, with a really low defensive line, and he wanted a left-footed midfield center back. I mean, Romagnoli for me was like a shoo-in, but then I'm happy he went to Lazio, because I think this is the future captain of Lazio, and I think that's good. It's good for Lazio, and a good to have him there, and being from Rome, and growing up at the club and all that. So I think that's what Lazio have to do. They have to be disciplined in defense, because Inter, when they start rolling the ball, can be a complete pain in the neck to play against. The Inter grind you down. I mean, we saw that so many times, especially against Roma and last season, and also Milan in all derbies, if we're perfectly honest, but especially the one in the Coppa Italia. When Inter have time, when you switch off and give Inter the time to roll the ball between them, and these movements, they will put you through the ringer. Lazio can't afford to do that. They have to be compact. They have to be concentrated. Inter, on the other hand, have to be extremely patient and not lose their temper, not lose their cool, and stay focused, because Lazio are going to be very disciplined. They're going to try to disrupt Inter. I think they're going to try to disrupt that passing. And they need to, as Gianni said, clinical. They can't afford to squander chances. And that's where Lukaku comes in. And this new Lula that we've seen, it's only 2 games. You can't draw too many conclusions. But I'm wondering, this ain't the same Lula that we saw 2 years ago. In that Lula 2 years ago, Lukaku was the main goal-scoring guy. Lautaro was his sidekick. It's different now. Lautaro's the main guy, and Lukaku is his sidekick. And you can see that there, so far at least, they seem to be okay with that. And that's what I think Lazio need to look out with, because Lautaro has absolutely developed this side of his game that I honestly have to hold my hands up and say I never thought he would ever be this much of a killer. I always thought he was more of a 9.5 seconda punta kind of guy who would get his 17 to 22 goals a season. But last season, towards the end of the last 2 months, he turned into an absolute bomber, a complete striker. And this season, you see that Lukaku is working a little bit more for him, and obviously his movement, Lautaro's movement, is what it is. But I wonder if Lautaro won't be Inter's top goal scorer, and I wonder if Lautaro doesn't even outscore Lukaku if we discard penalties, or in total as well. If Lautaro reaches the 30 goal threshold in all competitions, I think that's not an impossibility. And I think so. You need to watch out for them too, like Johnny said. But above all, you cannot let Inter start dominating you in possession and movement. You have to stay focused, because if you do that, Simone Inzaghi, as you know, has had him in Lazio. He loves to play. He likes to create numerical advantage in triangles in the pitch, and saw his way through, no matter whether it's centrally or where it is, to go behind and create another numerical advantage until he gets into a goal-scoring position. And he loves to do that with one-touch football. And you can't let them do that, because if they do that, they will destroy you. But on the other hand, if you can contain them and you can stay balanced and you can win the ball higher up, you can hurt them on the counter, because Inter are weak on the counter. They don't particularly have very fast central defenders. So it's, but I think it's going to be an even-handed game, and I have a draw. I have a prediction of a draw. I think a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, one of Lazio's strengths for the past few years has been their ability to counter so well, and that's where Cheeto thrives. And they've had quick decision makers. I think one of my frustrations, particularly in this Torino match, was how slow Lazio was to make their decisions. They allowed Torino to get set in defense. They allowed Torino to jump the ball and were so slow in possession, particularly in that midfield. And so often Cheeto was left alone, had little service. It felt like he was playing for the national team, where we hear time and time again, he's left alone. He's not getting a ton of balls. He's just kind of away from everybody. So if they're going to find themselves in position, I think your two keys are really important. One is playing organized from the back, and seeing that line dropped a little bit, I think serves players like Romagnoli really well. One of my frustrations with Patrick, and he is certainly a much more improved player under Sarri, but there are moments where he likes to jump the gun. He likes to attack the ball. He likes to get low and stick his feet in there. When he should be playing a little smarter, he should be playing off the ball, but he'll bite a lot, and he'll leave a player, in the past, like an Acerbi, alone to get eaten up. And so I want to see a player like Patrick being a little bit more cautious, a little bit more reserved, and then they've got to be quick in their possession, because Lazzari can punish. And you want to see a Felipe Anderson who's attack minded, who's, I like Felipe because of the work, which he doesn't get a ton of credit for, the work he does in defense and dropping back. But I need to see in a match like this, I need to see a Felipe Anderson with his head down attacking. And so that for me is going to be the big keys. I have the same prediction as you from a score line, Nima. I've got 1-1. I do think our defense is a lot more improved, but untested.
For sure.
And so for me, I'm hoping to see some of those changes. I like to see a Marcos Antonio come in. I'm not sure. I think Sarri's probably going to protect him and not necessarily give him the start in a match like this, but I would love to see what a player like him could do. Gianmarco, I'll let you close this out with your scoreline prediction.
Yeah, I actually I have a 2-1 win for Inter. Maybe that's the homer in me, but I do think that we're starting to kind of hit our stride, and I feel like the confidence is kind of building in the team. So I think they'll be able to get those 2 goals. I do think they're going to sweat it out. Like, it's going to be a 2-0 lead, and then Lazio's going to score, and then we're going to be panicking the last 25, 30 minutes of the game, just hoping we can hang on to it like we typically seem to struggle to do.
Well, this was great. Always enjoy talking to the both of you. I'll be excited to watch this one in person with you, Gianmarco. So, fellas, appreciate it. Happy to have you anytime. As always, sempre for